Welcome back to Celebrity Radio. It's Alex Belfield talking to some of the world's biggest stars and some of my favourite people. And today we've got a man who's going to give us an insight into one of the greatest artists in history. Roy Orbison has a brand new CD out called The Ultimate Collection. And the man that's here to talk about it is, well, the perfect guest, really. No one knows him better than his son, Alex Orbison, who joins us now here in the studio. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Alex.
This is really a great thrill for me because to get an insight firsthand, the last time I did this was with Frank Sinatra's son. And It was so remarkable to get that sort of inner sanctum view on a star and a legend because, of course, we know him for his music. And I suppose from your point of view, that's the most important, really, because that's his ultimate legacy.
You know, that was the maxim that we lived by even, when my dad was alive. It was let the music stand for himself. But, I think as times progressed and, I think in this century with the reality generation, people are looking for a little bit more. And I definitely know that I'm always curious to learn a little bit more.
Let's start right at the beginning. Was he a nice man?
Yeah. I'm still waiting for the person to come and say, your dad was a jerk to me. I met him in such and such place and he was totally rude. The story always goes, I met your dad and he was late for his flight and he had a fever and I was waiting there and he walked past me and then he thought about it and came back and took 1 minute and took a photo. And, people give me these photos and it'll be my dad with a fever outside the airport in Australia or wherever, and it's just, he was a kind and gentle soul. And, it really amazes me that he had it all. He was so famous and talented and then, I'm not a third of the person he was and I can still have my moments when I'm a jerk. So
don't we all? It's a relief to know that he was that. And as a father, was he a great role model? It seems to me that he gave you time, which is the greatest gift of all.
It really is. And, we had such access to him at 100%, that when obviously he was gone sometimes for tour, but then when he was back, you got a lot of him when he was back, and that's the most important thing. And just, having him try to help you through life's little follies. We're real similar. He and I had the glasses the same and some of the same quirks of personality. And he was just very, definitely wanted certain things and wanted us to, show up on time and be good and apply ourselves and all the things that you would as a parent. So it's very, very, very good in that way.
How old were you when you realized your dad was a genius?
Oh, man. I really, it sunk in, I think, probably pre-teen years. I think I was 11, maybe 11 turning 12, and we had a vinyl player and I had the records and I had listened through everything and really started to pick songs and realize the melodies and the chord structures were different and the songs he wrote versus the songs that he chose to sing and all that. And I really, really started to get the gravity of just the architecture of him as a songwriter, and those are like the bones that the voice is able to rap onto to stand up, and just really, it all started sinking in the more that I developed.
Don't laugh at me for this, but it seems to me that Roy had a voice on par with Pavarotti in a different way. But I mean, it was so stunningly brilliant. You've only got to try and sing any of these hits in karaoke to realize how high they are. They're incredibly, almost operatic, aren't they, at times?
They are. And my dad said he wasn't an opera singer. And I think it's only because he sang in normal voice and then he'd have these operatic, when he wanted to go there, then it was very operatic. But if you watch an opera closely, they sing operatic all the time, which is kind of a technical thing that he was very operatic. And the other thing about him is there's a certain part, especially in men, where your voice cracks between your high falsetto voice, your head, and when your range goes down into your chest, there's this part where your voice will crack and it sounds awful. And this was where Roy Orbison lived, where most other people crumble. If you listen to In Dreams or any of those songs, he runs up and down across this line that every normal person would just stay away from. And this is where he mastered, and he hung out there right in this like intricate zone, which most people protect and pretend like they don't have, you know. So even if it wasn't high, it was in this incredibly dangerous place. And I remember going to shows, and I just loved going to the live shows. And every night, every time, or the first song would go by, and normally it was Only the Lonely, and then Leah, and then all of a sudden, Here Comes Crying, and I thought, oh my God, he's going to get this ending. And here I am, his son. I know he's going to do it every time, but when you're in the moment, it just felt like there was no way he was going to make the note, and then it like almost like an acrobat, you know, or you know, someone doing a pole vault or something. Like, oh my God, like, is he going to do it? And it would draw you to the edge of your seat, and you would kind of get tense, and people start clapping. If you ever hear a live tape, if you listen to the Black and White Night, for instance, by the time he was halfway through the note going into the high note, people would start clapping just out of relief, you know. By the time he hit the note, everyone was standing up, and no one even knew they stood up, you know. And so having that power to bring that out of people and to feel all these emotions is just so incredible.
He's one of the few artists that can still make me cry. I mean, some of those lyrics are incredible, but you're only as good as the delivery. He had an ability to bring soul to his songs, which again put him above the rest. An incredible gift.
You know, his point of perspective where he put himself during the songs. And normally people had this like bragging kind of, you know, I'm the man. And normally he was just not quite that, or he was in a position, you know, and even Pretty Woman, it's like he goes out and everyone knows how it feels when you're going out, and then strikes up this thing with this girl, and then she's just walking away, you know, and then maybe tomorrow night, but wait, and then pap, the drums come, and all these are things that are so palpable and so human, you know, and it just is, you know, it has a certain irony and humor to it, but it's also deadly serious, you know, and it deals with all those, you know, those issues like Bruce Springsteen talks about, the paranoia and the, you know, the threateningness of a wonderful girl in an Angora sweater, just all these things that run through your head, you know, and it really is. It's just unbelievable more than anything else to think if you go to Nashville and walk through RCA Studio B, where my dad recorded a bunch of these hits, and you look at the walls, it's just, these are normal walls of a fairly normal recording studio, and how he went in there with the same group of people that everyone else went in there and came out with this totally different thing is just incredible.
You can ask the current Mrs. Belfield. I'm never wrong, and in my view, It's Over is the greatest song by your father. I'm not wrong, am I?
You know, this is one of the songs that my dad would record a song, and then when they were happy with it, it would be released, and then and he felt like they had nailed It's Over, and it's funny because I think this was just a little bit before 8-track, so maybe he had an actual record player in the car and would have had an acetate from the studio, but when going home, he drove past the house and listened to It's Over driving around the lake, and drove around for quite some time. And so yeah, you're completely right. This was one that my dad was thrilled at.
So beautiful. I'd love to hear the isolated vocals of your dad. Do you think you'll ever do that? Could we hear that maybe with a live orchestra? Could that happen in the future?
You know, I would love for that to happen, frankly. And so yeah, I would say that's is a great possibility. And I've actually been listening through the tracks recently, just in case something like that might happen. And I have to tell you that when this guy would go through the songs that he would sing twice, they would lay a vocal down, and then they would just do another one right afterwards. And if you solo out these two vocals, there's a little bit of phasing because they're only slightly different, but it's just like what you mentioned with Freddie Mercury. They're so similar that I just thought, man, this guy is such a professional, just so good. It's and freak, like freakishly good. So yeah, I'd love to hear that, and it definitely his voice lends itself to that. It really does.
I think the words legend and spine-tingling are overused these days, but that's certainly what your dad had. I wonder then, as we move to the Ultimate Collection of Roy Orbison, which is released this week, how you choose 27 studio albums. That must be 450 million songs. How do you come up with 26 of the best?
You try to figure out how many minutes are on a CD, on a single disc, because the goal was to have a single disc that had the definitive versions of the definitive hits. And so, this means if it's a Monument song that you're going to want to hear the Monument, and then you kind of you need to have the MGM included, and make sure that the later hits are there. And for us, that very much meant that Handle with Care needed to be on this disc for it to be definitive. Because even when the guys were all, making the band and making the records, they wanted to have these two things separate. But now that it's been, almost 20 years, it's to include the two together. To have the Wilburys with my dad's, considered one of my dad's hits. It really made the most sense for us, because it couldn't be all the hits if it didn't have Handle with Care on there. And so largely we just, I went through and read the Amazon comments to hear what people wanted and didn't want, and just kind of work my way back from what people didn't want, how long was on a disc, and what would be the definitive versions of the definitive songs. And of course, the big outlier there is Claudette, and the song Claudette, about my dad's first wife, Claudette, who was his muse through the, until she passed away in 1966. And this song was so important because the Everly Brothers recorded it, and it was the B-side to All I Have to Do Is Dream, Dream, Dream. And it made my dad aware of being a songwriter, and got him to Nashville, and got him a new Cadillac at the time. And he was able to actually endure, because he had had hard times and went broke and had to move back down to Texas from Sun Records. And so we wanted that, but the MGM version in 1965, it was lesser known than the Black and White Night version. So we chose the Black and White Night version because simply more people know it and recognize it from being a part of that. So it's a little bit of the process, and then also, it's a team effort here. And we talked to Sony, and Sony had a vision of what they wanted to hear, and we had our vision, and we had a democratic process of elimination. And at the end, we went back and forth a couple times, and then we all looked at it and just said, "This looks like a record." And then that's kind of where it's like the process of making David or whatever. We just chipped away everything that wasn't ultimate, and here you go.
And yesterday they sent me a couple of pictures of you with your dad. How does that feel? Because in a way, you've got the gift of having your dad still with you because you've got these songs. But at the same time, of course, there's nothing like having that hug at the end of the day, is there?
When you lose someone who's that close to you, especially at a young age, it just changes everything fundamentally, everything about you. And of course, the music is such a way of reconnecting, and getting these things together and listening to the tracks and listening to the interviews, and what's really crazy is like when someone online has a picture of me and my dad that I don't even have. And, I'll see on Facebook or something and go, whoa, this is, I remember that, but I never had a photo of it. And in a way, it's a blessing because people have these photos of my dad that I've never seen. And I'm able to, especially we had a fire in 1968 that killed my two oldest brothers, Roy, Dwayne, and Tony. And then we had another fire, a Malibu fire in 1993 that destroyed a bunch of my dad's stuff from the 80s. I mean, literally just what you can load into the car and drive out of there before the house burned down. It was a brush fire, a wildfire. But, so we've lost enough stuff that just like hearing my dad's voice. There's a never-ending supply of live shows and my dad doing interviews that I'm able to go hear his voice and remember specifically what it's like. And it is very, very, very nice. It makes, going through these big projects makes me feel close with my dad, which is very special.
And moreover, I think he'd be so proud of you because you've continued his legacy with music. You were always going to be musical. It seemed like from a very early age, you just loved everything from the drums to the piano, the guitar. You almost went through every instrument.
Yeah, I think so. And the fact that they were supportive of me even when I became a drummer, which is totally not the family norm, like, they were so supportive of me, and I was focused on that. And I think that he would be proud of me in the sense that doing what I do, and help putting together these packages and going through making the documentaries on my dad's life and working, we have a state endorsed book that's coming and later a Hollywood biopic. This is what I would rather be doing more than anything on the planet. So I think that would make my dad happy because, after touring, I toured for the better part of 15 years. And so, or actually just a little over that. And so I'd kind of gotten to the end of the road where, it's getting a little tired of that and ready for something new. And so doing this has been just wonderful for me. So I think that he would be proud because it's something that I'm 100% dedicated to, and I think he'd be flattered that it was for him. But in the end, I think he was so fiercely independent, that only, he felt that life wasn't to be compromised. He told me that the best backup plan is no backup plan. So when he tried, it was literally make or break, like hit song or starve, and that was the outcome. To the point where people probably thought he was crazy. So it's nice to have that as a guideline to work on and push through these projects.
Somebody did say after his passing that he'd worked himself to death. Was there a point where he couldn't switch off? Do you think that was true?
Yeah, I don't think he worked himself to death. I think he would have worked until his death, no matter the date, for sure. He had toured every year, and from the time that he was 15 or whatever. So, and he had been playing music since he was 6 years old, and so he literally didn't know how to do anything else. And I don't know if he would have been able to ever retire or do anything. And yeah, from an outsider's perspective, it would be easy to say that he worked himself to death, but I don't think there was any increase in his schedule or anything that would have been out of the norm to actually, have done the deed. I think, as with anyone's life, I think the time has just run out.
It will be 30 years very soon since your father passed away. I wonder for you whether every time you switch on the radio and hear his songs played, whether that gives you comfort, and the fact that he still lives on is the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning, because that's rare, isn't it, that 30 years after someone passed, he's still as contemporary today as he ever was.
It is. And, for me, it was like 16 years, I think, until I was able to turn on the radio and hear my dad's voice and not get like have a emotional reaction where I would be saddened. And so now I definitely hear it, and I'm like, I recognize it, and I'm happy to hear it and all that. And, there is a bit of work to be done on our side as the brothers, and with our whole team at Orbison. And it seems like my dad works in like 25-year increments, and he had this thing at 1964, it was from 63 to 65, let's say. And then 25 years later, in the 80s, it was from like, 87, 88, all the way to like 93. And so our goal is to have these next 3 or 4 years be some of the biggest for Orbison, and those are huge shoes to fill and a huge goal to aim at. But I do think it's possible to, with the foundation we've been laying down and the projects ahead, to really, really be a part of the scene again. And so, I mean, my dad always is there. Sometimes you just need a little reminding of how good the stuff actually was.
Oh, what a remarkable man, an incredible voice. Let's get that together for 2018 for the 30th anniversary.
Yes,
the Roy
sir.
Orbison Ultimate Collection is available this week. Oh Pretty Woman, I Drove All Night, You Got It, Crying, Only the Lonely, and the best track of them all, It's Over, are all featured on this fabulous CD. Alex, a really great honour talking to you. Thank you for your time.
You too. You too. Talk to you soon.